November 30th, 2013, a Saturday afternoon. Blue skies, a quiet street in Valencia, California, and then a sound that witnesses described as an explosion. Not a crash, an explosion. Within seconds, a Porsche Carrera GT was wrapped around a concrete lamppost, engulfed in flames so intense that first responders could not get close. Inside that car are two men. One of them had just wrapped filming on one of the biggest movie franchises in Hollywood history. His name was Paul Walker, and he had 93 seconds from the moment that car lost control to the moment everything went dark. This is the story of those 93 seconds, and what we know and what we still don't know about the last minutes of one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. To understand what was lost that day, you need to understand who Paul Walker actually was. Not Brian O'Connor, the character, the man. Paul William Walker IV was born on September 12, 1973, in Glendale, California. He grew up surfing, diving, and living the kind of life that seemed almost too cinematic to be real. He was quietly religious, deeply private, and by every account from people who knew him, genuinely, almost unusually kind. Vin Diesel once said, "There is no Fast and Furious without Paul Walker." That wasn't just sentimentality, it was a business fact. Paul was the emotional anchor of the franchise, the one who made audiences feel something between all the explosions and engine roars. But here's something Hollywood never fully advertised. Paul Walker was quietly running a disaster relief charity called Reach Out Worldwide. When Typhoon Hainan devastated the Philippines in 2013, he personally organized relief shipments. He was on his way back from a charity event the day he died. Let that sit for a moment. The man who the world knew as a fictional street racer died on his way home from trying to save lives. November 30th, 2013. Paul Walker had taken a break from filming Furious 7 in Atlanta to attend a fundraiser for Typhoon Hainan victims in Valencia. The event was organized through his charity, Reach Out Worldwide. By mid-afternoon, the event was winding down. Paul decided to take a ride with his friend and financial advisor, Roger Rodas, a professional racing driver who owned the luxury car dealership, always evolving. The car, a 205 Porsche Carrera GT Silver, one of the most powerful production cars ever built, with a notoriously difficult manual transmission that even experienced drivers described as unforgiving. Witnesses standing on Hercules Street said the Porsche passed them, doing what they estimated to be between 80 and 93 miles per hour. The speed limit on that road, 45 miles per hour. At that speed, on that road, they had almost no margin for error. At approximately 3:30 p.m., the Porsche drifted, then fishtailed, then hit a curb. The car went airborne briefly before slamming into two concrete lampposts and a tree. The fuel tank ruptured on impact. Within seconds of fire, eyewitnesses said the flames were 30 feet high. Before emergency services even arrived on the scene, Roger Rodas died on impact. The coroner's report confirmed death from multiple traumatic injuries sustained in the crash, Paul Walker's cause of death. The coroner listed two causes, combined effects of traumatic and thermal injuries, which means Paul Walker did not die on impact. He survived the crash. And what happened in those final moments inside that burning car is something the official reports describe in clinical language. But the reality of it is something far more difficult to process. In the investigation that followed, the Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff's Station concluded that the crash was caused by unsafe speed for the conditions and mechanical issues related to tire degradation. The tires on the Porsche investigators found were 9 years old. Rubber that loses elasticity, loses grip. On a car traveling at that speed, it's a ticking clock. Roger Rodas' family later filed a lawsuit against Porsche, arguing the car had design defects, specifically that the fuel tank was positioned in a way that made fire virtually inevitable in a rear impact collision. Porsche settled the case out of court. Here's what I want you to think about. Paul Walker was a passenger. He was not driving. He had no control over the speed, the tires, or the road. He got into a car with a friend, the way any of us do on any ordinary Saturday, and he never got out. That's the part that hits hardest. Not the fame, not the franchise. Just a man, a seatbelt, a fire, and no way out. Furious 7 was released in April 2015, 17 months after Paul died. The studio used existing footage, CGI, and his brothers as stand-ins to complete his final scenes. The film's ending, where Brian O'Connor drives off into the sunset as his friends watch, and was not in the original script. It was written after Paul's death, as a goodbye. In cinemas across America, the UK, and the world, grown men wept openly, not for a character, for a person they had never met, but somehow deeply loved. Paul Walker was 40 years old. He left behind a daughter, Meta Walker, who has since carried on his charity work with quiet, extraordinary grace. He didn't die on a film set. He didn't die doing a stunt. He died doing what he always did when the cameras weren't rolling, trying to help someone else. The terrifying truth about Paul Walker's last minutes isn't the speed, or the fire, or the impact. It's the fact that right up until that moment, he was exactly the person he always appeared to be, and the world lost him anyway. If this moved you, share it with someone who loved Paul Walker. Subscribe for more stories told the way they deserve to be.